Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far, and would you have written the storylines of the season? The two biggest tournaments at the end of the year, certainly in terms of prize money, and OpTic Texas somehow have won them both. A dominating performance on the grand finals day after taking down Heretics in a remarkable series, to say the very least, possibly the best of the year. How has this all transpired in the way that it has? What are the key storylines as a result of today to keep an eye on over the next several weeks? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. It is very clear that OpTic have set themselves as the mark for this off-season. If teams want to try and form rosters to beat someone, it is OpTic who now have the target officially on their back, and they've done so in absolutely spectacular fashion. We're going to begin with this tweet from Beans, who closed out the day by saying one border agent to, of course, stop bees getting into the country back at Major 3 and made Mercules the pickup for Toronto. All of a sudden, we've seen what's happened since then. Possibly one of the best iterations of any COD team of all time, says Beans, and you can't really deny that, right? Like, what OpTic have done here, you look back in OpTic history, the last time they had anything that was back-to-back was the Dynasty. They won the event before the World Championship in 2017, then they won champs, and now OpTic all these years later have done it again. It's remarkable to think about. Obviously we're going to talk about all the series today, but I remember last year saying that last year's OpTic team was the best since the Dynasty. And I think that was true. The Pred, Kenny, Shotzzy, Dashy iteration that won the World Championship, even before they'd won it, I think it was kind of clear that they were the best team that OpTic had put together, the most consistent, the most compelling, the most dominant on their day team that OpTic had put together since 2017, pretty much, when the Dynasty won the World Championship. Fast forward 12 months, all of a sudden the conversation's very different, right? And OpTic have somehow done it again, totally out of nowhere. So we had Surge today play Toronto, and this is always going to be, I thought, a banger series. I'm not surprised that today's series were great. It's kind of unfortunate in hindsight that the one series that wasn't turned out to be the grand finals, but it has been that way before. So Surge and Toronto, you couldn't really split them. It was a fascinating series because Toronto made that change. Of course, they brought in, well, Mercules initially, and then they got rid of Beans recently. They brought in Abe, and Abe's done a very commendable job, and I do really wonder what that means from here. This is pretty funny from Aroma, who was talking about Neptune popping some snakes, let's just say, and Neptune did have a tweet about it after the day to say, yeah, wasn't really playing like myself today in some regard, and certainly we saw that in the final map of the grand finals. But yeah, Aroma says at Dan Ghosty, which isn't actually the correct at, there's an O before it, but whatever, you were onto something, he says. So pretty funny stuff. It goes to a game 5, and in the end, it's JoeDeceives and the Toronto guys that go down. They fall short just about. Kind of how I thought this series might go, especially after Joe won this 1v1. It's like, okay, 4-3. It looked like it was maybe going to be Toronto getting the win, but Insight finds himself in a 1 versus 2. We've seen a lot, and we've seen a lot from a player like Nastie. I mean, this would have been one of the fumbles of all time. Nastie said in a tweet afterwards that he did not intend to dive around the corner like that. If he did, then, it's time to get this guy out of the league ASAP, but no, that was an unintentional play. Insight 1v1. And then, of course, he's got to make the play. Abuzah holds the angle, and Abuzah gets the job done in the end. But wow, Nastie would have been feeling some type of way about that. You can see the guy cracking up afterwards because, wow, he got bailed out of that one big time. And as Joe says, of course, at this point, they were out of the tournament, right? Yes, they had a losers bracket consolation game, but it didn't really matter. GG's Vancouver, that just sums it up. Never been more disappointed with how close that we were. Hurts more than anything. So I wonder what JoeDeceives will do, because after the tournament ended, he'll definitely look at his team and say, you know what, Abe definitely held his own. CleanX and Insight definitely looked more compelling as an AR duo this event than they have done before. And really, it was an absolute bloodbath, and either team could have won this series. Game 5, round 11, 1 versus 1. Doesn't get much closer than that, but if you thought that was a good series, then you just wait for this one, right? Because OpTic played Heretics. BenJ called it. BenJ, Ball Noah, never thought I'd see the day, but he called it last night and said this would be the series of the year. And, well, what did we see? It was not only probably the series of the year, but maybe the best series in a good time in COD. I mean, this was remarkable. It had everything. There was, had the clutches, it had the 1-point hard points. Like, game 1 was an absolute bang out on the skyline. And Heretics get the job done. We know what's true with Heretics. If Metals delivers, then they can beat anyone. I mean, I said it yesterday, I said it again this morning, I think, that if Metals plays well, Heretics have the ability to take down any team in the game, even OpTic, with the positivity that they had going in. There was a lot of drama in the Search and Destroys, because as you guys can tell, the crowd was pretty mega, right? The Heretics fans were going crazy, and then the OpTic fans also going crazy on the other side. And there was a lot of energy in the room. There was lots of noise in the room. And in some of the diffuse moments in Search and Destroy, there was a bit of crowd noise happening, right? And we have seen that before. And it was happening on both sides. It wasn't like it was any team's fault especially. I know that EWC did try and make a run to shut that down. But Heretics win the game too. And then OpTic need to reverse sweep the series. And we've not seen, I don't know if any reverse sweeps this tournament, certainly not for quite some time. They go to the Hacienda, they go to a game, round 5 on the Hacienda, and they just about got over the line. At this point, it looked like they were going to do it, but Shotzzy, it's always Shotzzy, man. I don't know what it is, but this guy, ever since making those comments at the start of the year and trying to clown all the other teams, and it seemed to backfire massively, when it mattered, it was always Shotzzy at the end of the season, making the plays, and man, this guy is genuinely writing his name into the history books with every single action right now, because, like, what a player, what a talisman in many respects for this OpTic team that Shotzzy has been this season. The energy that he's brought to the table has been just sensational, and okay, maybe it's been unlocked to some degree by Mercules coming in and fixing many of the problems they had, but what an absolute banger. And they win the game 3, then we go to a game 4, and again, it's the same old story. OpTic they'll just go down 80 points on a rewind. They'll go down 50 points in a rewind, and they won't care. They'll bring the comeback anyway. They did it again here against Heretics. I mean, this was an absolute bang out. You know, we just saw that play from Shotzzy, but I thought I'll just share it again. And this was such a huge moment here, right? There was a big kill that, I think it was maybe Dashy got a big kill on the rotation here, and all of a sudden, OpTic kind of flipped the switch and they took over the game. And Dashy was an absolute monster today. For a player who people have been discussing, oh, well, you know, how long, especially if OpTic are struggling, right? Like, how long might Dashy have left? He's won his ring now. You know, this was a conversation that sometimes occurred earlier in the season, and then Dashy turns up today, drops a 1.5 in the grand final of the World Cup. Mesmerizingly good stuff. Shotzzy gets a disgusting ace. At this point, it felt pretty clear that OpTic were going to find a way over the line in this series. There was talk from Hector, among others, that, you know, people need to be shut down in terms of calling out and stuff in the Search and Destroys. It was frustrating for many, and yeah, that's what Hex makes very clear. And I think there was confirmation shortly afterwards that indeed they did do an announcement in the arena to say, look, don't give away when someone's defusing or whatever, you're going to get kicked out of the arena. So that's pretty good, at least, to hear that they tried, I suppose. But at the end of the day, it is one of those things that happens sometimes. And then, I mean, if it wasn't enough having the one map, the 1 point hard point, the round 5 Search and Destroy, never knowing who was going to win, Mercules finds himself in a 1 versus 3, and this was just the play, right? This was the play of the tournament. 1v3, gets the first kill onto Super. 1v2, finesse is pretty nice. Obviously, the other guy's trying to sync up with his teammates here, and then Mercules gets out of there. At this point, Huke's 1 in 7, having a difficult map. Shotzzy's 12 in 6, no surprises there on the game 5, always delivering. And then Mercules makes a nice play, catches a pretty nice timing here, but it's so difficult to win these rounds. But he catches his timing perfectly. They don't trade him out. He's on 30 HP. He gets out of the way. Metals goes down. I mean, okay, it was pretty poorly played from the Heretics, but you're never going to have a 1v3 that wasn't played pretty poorly from the other guys, especially in that kind of circumstance. And, I mean, what a round to win. That's what is so impressive about Mercules, is that not only is he incredibly icy a lot of the time, and also has the gun skill and all the other factors, right? Okay, you've got a rookie. He's got good gun skill. Sure, maybe no real surprise. But for him to be so ice cold and have moments like this in the locker as well, that's what sets Mercules apart from many of the rookies that we've seen. And just the consistency, the maturity, the communication, the understanding, the ability to deliver in big moments. There's not many rookies that have ever had that kind of prowess. That's why Shawnee called him an industry plant. Like, it's almost too good to be true. And this was Huke's reaction, seeing it all unfold. So, absolute scenes. They go on to win the map. Mercules crushes the Heretics key. Of course, Heretics had the consolation game still, but their key was crushed. They're out of the tournament. And that ended up in the trophy in just a couple of hours' time. Shotzzy says, damn, like, that was a battle testing series. Job's not finished, though. As Shotzzy says, kid is generational, truly the best clutch that I've ever witnessed. So, yeah, unbelievable stuff. Mercules ain't going anywhere anytime soon. There is no doubt about that one. Bang out series. I mean, what else to say? All the maps are insane. 250, 249, 6-5 on the rewind, 2-3 on the Hacienda. OpTic then win on the map 4. But that was a big comeback, right? Like, I mean, look, they were down 50 points or so for a little while. It didn't look like OpTic were necessarily going to do that. They did. And then game 5 was all over the shop before OpTic eventually closed it. So it doesn't get much better than that. We then go down to the consolation game. There was 20 grand, I think, each on the line for this. I don't know how they're going to split it with the coaches for this tournament, just because the coaches kind of a more important deal this event. And I will say we will have discussions over the coming days how relevant this tournament was from that kind of coaching perspective, right? Because at the end of the day, people said, oh, well, the coaching staff, the tournament counts less, and whatever you want to say. But did it really make much difference at the end of the day? OpTic were the favourites, and they still won. There was a pretty wild couple of tweets going down, I'm not gonna lie, so I'm just gonna steal on this for 2 seconds, then we're gonna move on. So anyway, JoeDeceives says, GG's to Miami, 1-3-2. That series is the McCoy Ultra fans, right? So kind of crazy that Heretics in the end, despite coming so close to actually winning the whole thing, this was in the first series, I think, by the way, when Abe was having a tough time after, of course, they lost, and JoeDeceives is consoling him. I thought it was really nice. I wonder if, that duo will continue, whether Abe will keep his spot in the league, because, he played well here. And they eventually, I mean, it was another game 5 round 11, right? Like, okay, it doesn't really matter this series, but it was again another absolute bang out. And fair play, Toronto get over the line. Renko had a 1.2, but it wasn't quite good enough. So competitive to close out the year here. Basically all of these different teams. And just commendable for all. I mean, I knew that today was going to be great. Like, the teams that turned up to Sunday today were all very competitive. And the way that it manufactured in the end was pretty important for many of these teams, right? I think Toronto and Heretics and these other guys will definitely use what happens this weekend is very relevant, right? Like, at the end of the day, whatever you say about the importance of this tournament, the way that some of these players and teams delivered at the World Cup is going to be a critical factor when it comes to roster decisions made in the relatively near future. And after this result, surely OpTic cannot do anything, right? Because this team that they have put together, absolutely absurd. And unfortunately for Surge, they've done it again, right? They turn up to another grand finals. We know what's happened over the last few months. I mean, they made a grand finals on a minor. They've now made 4 grand finals here at major tournaments, including the World Cup and the World Championship. And they've lost on every single occasion, and most of the time relatively emphatically. It was kind of unfortunate that the grand finals didn't really deliver. It was an absolute bloodbath. Dashy especially, really. Neptune had a particularly difficult time. The key members of the Surge team just didn't really turn up. But to be fair, after OpTic beat Heretics, it was difficult to imagine really any way back for the opposition. And I feel like in hindsight, you look even at the World Championship Grand Final, OpTic will probably feel like they should have won it more comfortably than they did. So, maybe this series result on some level shouldn't be that surprising. But it was, it was very clear that OpTic were going to take this tournament. And what a remarkable turnaround that they've had over the last few months. And it sets up just some of the most fascinating developments over the next few weeks that we're probably ever going to see in COD history. So this was an absolute masterclass, really. The rewind was very close, but when OpTic got over the line here, they went up big and they just about got over the line. It was pretty clear, I think, that OpTic were going to get the job done in the series. Drazah says, what have I done? So, maybe by dropping the what have I done earlier in the year, Dashy then fires back. Drazah comes back at it and kind of says, damn, like, how have I allowed this to happen as the OpTic CEO? OpTic made 2 grand finals. They won them both, 9 in 3 map counts. Surge made 5 grand finals, including the minor, 6 in 21 map counts overall. So tough scenes for them, and OpTic lift the trophy. So happy for Huke. I mean, again, right, it's even going into this tournament, there was lots of talk about OpTic Simp, and okay, if OpTic don't win the event, what are they going to do? Also cool to have the OpTic Gaming logo here, because this tournament, for a lot of it, they were just OpTic was on the jersey, not OpTic Texas, just OpTic with the logo that they've got on their jerseys there. But, JP had the OpTic Gaming logo on, the OpTic Gaming logo in the background. It's been a while since I've seen a trophy lift with the OpTic Gaming logo. That is very much for sure. Since December 2018 it will have been, since they won CWL Las Vegas at the start of the Black Ops 4 season. And all of these guys just cementing their legacies more and more. I think the way this tournament transpired, how competitive it was, and the fact that the technical issues reduced over time and they kind of got there, and also the map pool was the same in the end without all the drama that happened on the first day. I think people in hindsight, and maybe it's because, oh, well, OpTic won, so people take it more serious because they also won champs, and therefore it's like, okay, well, it must matter more because clearly it wasn't random because the champions won back-to-back, and maybe there's some truth to that as well. But it's so commendable for all of these guys' legacies, but also for these guys' bank accounts at the end of the day as well. Nastie says 4 second places, sums it up pretty well. That's like 5 in a row for me, which is, yeah, so devastating for the Surge guys, but no one could mess with OpTic at the end of this season. Absolute cinema season. We've got a lot to talk about over the next couple of days because as a result of this, what are the other teams going to try and do? Because beating this OpTic the way they look to the end of the year is a challenge, especially if next game is similar to this one. Teams will be trying to form some squads to take down this OpTic team next season. Very much interested in your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.